Hi everyone, this is Peter Ong of Rester Age Advisory. Welcome to episode 5 of Opportunities Unusual. Today we tackle a very difficult topic. How can you lead credibly and confidently in this blended world? In episode 1, you may recall that I gave a brief definition of what the blended world is. It is the physical professional offices and the digitized virtual versions of these offices combining together. So if leading in the physical professional offices is already so difficult, how could one lead credibly and confidently in this new blended world? To commence our discussion, I'm going to share with you a very happy event that happened for me 2 weeks back. 2 weeks back, out of the blue, Singapore's in its circuit breaker time. Out of the blue, a new client called me up and said, Peter, could you give a virtual talk to our senior HR leaders who are coming for our regional planning week? But this time, they are not flying in. We are all dialing in into a video call. And we'll do this for 3 half days. Could you give a virtual talk to help us raise the energy, engagement, and effectiveness levels of our senior HR leaders? I was, of course, very happy to do so. And the topic that they picked was cultivating a leadership brand which counts. Why am I telling you all this? This is because in this important topic of cultivating a leadership brand which counts, a leader who is not confident, who is not credible in leading in this physical professional world will usually, almost always, not have a leadership brand which counts. This is important topic because it will help you really get the respect, get the trust of your team members. It will help you get the trust, get the respect of your entire enterprise, and it will help you have a leadership brand which counts. I'm going to share today's topic in 3 distinct sections. Part 1 or section 1 will be on 4 metaphors of leadership. Part 2, section 2, will be on 4 things you can learn depending on which metaphor of leadership you personally identify with. And finally, in part 3, section 3, I will share with you 2 things that you really need to learn to lead credibly and to lead confidently in this new blended world. Let's start with part 1, section 1. What are the 4 metaphors of a leader which I want to share with you? Imagine with me a y-axis and an x-axis. The y-axis says team enjoyment. The x-axis says team effectiveness. And now imagine a 2x2 box within the x and y axis. When I meet a client for the first time, often I kind of quickly categorize in my mind, what is the sort of leadership that this client have? How does he or she normally lead when they are under stress? How would they normally lead in their day-to-day authentic selves? And then I kind of place them in this 2 and 2 box. I normally do not tell the client what box I place them into because this is for my own preparation to help guide, mentor, and coach them and to design their respective executive coaching programs. Right at the bottom of this 2x2 box, lowest I think on team enjoyment and on team effectiveness is this model which many of my clients are kind of guilty of. It's called the teacher-parent model. The teacher-parent model is characterized by a lot of management and control features and the words, I inform you, I'm instructing you, can you please do this? I'm instructing you, just follow, right? So the teacher and parent model has a bit of a high power distance, and people who follow the teacher and parent model often tend to use their own personal value systems and their own leadership capacities and their own talents and their strengths and their capacities as a universal yardstick in measuring against their team members. Higher up on the team enjoyment level, but equally low, I think, on the team effectiveness level, is the friend and the bro model. The friend and the bro model, usually a leader who exemplifies that is kind of casual and very consensual with his or her team, they tend to find it very difficult to give tough, difficult messages. And this could be asking people to work across a couple of nights or across the weekend. And sometimes they have a roundabout way of sharing feedback, especially the feedback is very difficult. Perhaps you identify with the friend and the bro model. Higher in team effectiveness, but not as high on team enjoyment, is the gladiator warrior model. Perhaps some of us are following this model. This is a model that says I must deliver at all costs, and everything my boss shares with me, I'm going to deliver and exceed his or her expectation. Leaders that follow this model tend to be extremely task orientated. Sometimes they work their people to death. Whilst they normally don't question upwards, they are pretty micromanaging sometimes when the time is tight and they have to push their people to deliver at all costs. So what is the model that comes right at the top right hand corner of this 2x2 box? Highest in team enjoyment and highest in team effectiveness. Personally, this is my favorite model, and I do meet clients time and time again who exemplifies this model. Let's call this the orchestra conductor model. What does an orchestra conductor do? Usually the orchestra conductor has to lead both an orchestra and a choir, and they keep them in tune, in time, and tightly aligned together to have a wondrous musical outcome. The orchestra conductor is oftentimes also the channel point or the messenger for the music and the composer. And in doing so, he or she harnesses all the small bits and pieces into a grand unified vision, a big picture vision of what can be achieved, knowing fully well the strengths, the capabilities, the talents of every individual in the orchestra and in the choir, and bringing this to a nice unified whole. The baton that the conductor carries, of course, it's not for beating people, but it's more for integration, it's more for direction giving. It is to bring that all for one, one for all kind of spirit. So as you can see, in the 2 and 2 box that I shared with you, highest on team enjoyment, team effectiveness is the orchestra conductor model. Let me now move on to section 2, part 2, where I'll share with you, depending on whatever models you identify with, there are learning points, even for the orchestra conductor model. If you identify with the teacher-parent model, very much you are likely always informing and instructing. How many of us like parents or teachers who keep reminding us what to do? But we remember fondly that teacher who inspires us and who influences us positively to transform ourselves, who give us courage, who give us confidence. So the teacher-parent model must be complemented, inform, instruct, also positively influence, and definitely positively inspire. If you enhance your leadership this way, you will be able to give your team members courage to transform. For the friend and the bro model, instead of being overly casual and consensual, you need to learn how to bring across difficult messages in a clear and concise and in a direct manner, yet with compassion and empathy. Because you are casual and consensual, you probably already understand compassion and empathy. So you need to learn to bring across messages in a tough way. And let me share with you how to do so quickly. The 2 questions you need to ask yourself is, what do my team members really need and what do they really want? Then you have to turn the focus on yourself and ask yourself, what do you really need and what do you really want? And bring across those messages in a clear, concise, compassionate manner. This is what I need from you. I understand that this is what you want from me. I will continue to give you this. Don't worry about that, but this is what I need from you. This is what I want from you. Something like that. It will raise your game tremendously. If you identify with the gladiator and the warrior model, you would probably always be emphasizing, team, we need to deliver this, we need to make this on time, we need to deliver this at all costs. You need to learn how to motivate your people. You need to learn how to recognize your people. You need to learn how to praise your people. You need to learn how to make your people feel good. You need to learn how to enhance people, relationships, and trust. So instead of managing, instead of controlling, perhaps mentor and motivate instead. Focus on human relationships. Focus on trust. That will raise your game tremendously. At this stage, let me sneak in a happy milestone for me in 2019. In 2019, 3 of my clients in the exact same organization got promoted. They were all of the same level. They all got promoted to a significant milestone next level. And I've never told any of them this, but one of them identifies with the parent-teacher model. One identifies strongly with the friend and bro model, and another with the gladiator and the warrior model. They all learned new things, and they are able to lead credibly and confidently, and they all got promoted. So even if you have my favorite orchestra conductor model, what can you learn? Let me share this with you. I think you need to learn how to build high-performing, high-impact teams. If you are an orchestra conductor, you identify with that, you probably are very good yourself in harnessing everyone together. But perhaps you may not be able, and you do not know how to build a high-performance, high-impact team. You know, in F1 Grand Prix, the shortest, fastest pit stop is 1.88 seconds. And the longest, most dismal pit stop is 1 whole minute. That's a difference of 58 seconds. That's the difference between a high-performance, high-impact team. You can consistently, predictably rely on them to deliver. If you are adhering to the orchestra conductor model, learn how to build a high-performing, high-impact team. I have 3 litmus test questions for you to determine whether your team is high-performing, high-impact. 1. Are your people getting better every year? Okay. Stagnation, staying status quo is not good enough. 2. Are you able to bring out the best individually and collectively in your people? Are you able to do so? If you're able to bring out the best of them collectively, then you unlock Aristotle's the sum of the whole is greater than the individual sum of the parts. But of course, we also need to work on the individual sum of the parts. The third question for you, are your people able to do more with less every year? Of course, high-performing teams must have the ability to do more with less. If you do more with more all the time, any average or above average team could do that. Let me now move on to section and part 3. In this blended world, what are the 2 things you really need to learn? Let me start with the first one. Have you heard of the terms objective distance? Objective distance is nothing more than physical geographic distance. So if my client is in Netherlands, in Holland, if my client is in Shanghai, we could say that Peter being in Singapore and the client being in Holland or Shanghai has big objective distance because they are the physical distances between us. Now, there's another term called subjective distance. If the client in Holland I've known for 15 years, and indeed I have a client in Holland, and he's now a mid-level politician. He's always shared with me that he wanted to be a politician. But anyway, stories aside, the subjective distance between me and my client in Holland and me and my client in Shanghai could actually be very small, even though the objective distance is very large. It's because we know each other well, we've kind of supported each other, we know each other's hobbies, and we've seen each other's clients and families. We've seen each other progress and our family members grow up. So subjective distance can be made small, even though objective distance is large. Let me share with you quickly a real story. a very senior client of mine in the digitized new world, where you remember I've shared with you that some companies have said you could work at home till the end of the year if you like. And some company even went further and said, if your job doesn't require it, you can work from home in a blended world forever. So one of my clients belonging to one of such companies, they're very savvy at bridging that subjective distance. They are very savvy at using technology. But his boss, very senior too in the company, sponsors him to 2 trips every year, globally and regionally, 2 trips to build relationships, to build teaming and trust, to reduce that subjective distance. So the physical trips are not made because they need to deliver work which they cannot do, but the physical trips are made to reduce that subjective distance. Final learning point in this blended world. Let me call it collaborative, charismatic communications in the digitized virtual channels. I had conducted 50 such video calls since Singapore started its circuit breaker, and at every one of the video call, I asked my clients to turn on the video cam, and many happily obliged. Then I asked them this question. Internally, if you have video calls, and my clients are actually working harder now that they are working from home, do you turn on the video cam? And 2/3 to 3/4 to my shock says, no, Pete, we don't turn on the video cam. But after they spoke with me, they are now beginning to turn on their video cams. Why is that so? Because if you don't turn on the video cam, you take technology back 20 years, correct? 20 years ago, we already have audio conferencing capabilities. And if you don't turn on the video cam, it's nothing more than an audio conferencing capability. And how many of us have multitasked on those things and not really paid full attention to those calls? Turning on the video cam makes us on point, make us mindful of people's time, make us run effective, collaborative, engaged, energized meetings. Turning on that video cam is important. Not to mention that you could read body language and you could see how everyone is responding. So to lead in the blended world, reducing subjective distance, turning on that video cam, having collaborative, charismatic communication is important. And the last thing you need to note in this collaborative, charismatic communication is you need to let your team members feel that they still belong and they are still in the know. Let them know what's going on organizationally, team-wise, and individually, personally with our lives. People are social creatures. In this blended world, we want to remain tapped into the social network, into the social channels, and you as a leader must allow that. I hope I've done credibly with you today, teaching you this very difficult topic in such a condensed period of time. Let me end off today's session with this quotation. It's attributed to Bruce Lee, but he could have taken it from somewhere else. The usefulness of a cup is its emptiness. How deep and profound, yet how simple that is. Right? This relates to our ability to learn, and the only way we can learn is that, like a cup, we are constantly able to empty ourselves and unlearn certain things such that we can be filled up again. I hope today you've learned some new things and you can unlearn some things about leadership that will allow you to lead credibly and confidently in this blended world. Well, if you like this video, if you enjoyed this video, you found it useful, please do share it with your friends. Thank you for joining me for episode 5. In our next video, we'll be talking about how to accelerate the development and the readiness of your next in line leaders. This is now part of the Let's Not Waste This Crisis series, which will help us build the strong transformational foundation that will help your company thrive right into the next decade, right into the long foreseeable future. So next topic, how to accelerate the development and the readiness of your next inline leaders. I meet you again next week. Thank you. Please join me. Bye-bye.